Alright, so I did my movie on Patch Adams, and I have a trailer for you. My name's DJ, by the way.
It is our mission here to rigorously and ruthlessly train the humanity out of you and make you into something better. We're gonna make doctors out of you.
Well, I just believe there's more to being a doctor than memorizing facts about ventricular
I
arteries.
don't care what you think. I care about my biology test.
We're not even going to see a patient until the 3rd year.
If we want to become a doctor, we have to learn to treat the patient as well as the disease. That's why we have to dive into people.
You have a brilliant mind, and like many brilliant people, you don't necessarily think the rules apply to you.
It was so much more convenient thinking of you as an idiot.
A little ice that isn't chipped off. If you want to be a clown, go join the circus.
For your own sake, I think you should just lay low for a while.
The hospital will cover all of your bills. Any other questions?
Patients are opening up to them, Corinne. They're sharing their dreams, their fantasies. They don't concentrate on the pain.
I'm warning you, stay out of this hospital.
What if a doctor becomes emotionally involved with a patient? What is wrong with that?
Patients don't need a friend, they need a doctor.
My name is Dr. Phil. I'll be your surgeon. Oh, there you are.
You're dismissed. Sir, from this school.
They can't prevent me from graduating because of a personality clash, can they?
Universal Pictures presents.
You are not cut out to be a physician.
Our job is improving the quality of life, not just delaying death.
The true story of a man who broke every rule.
Why am I such a threat to you, sir?
Because what you want is for us to get down there on the same level as our patients.
And proved that laughter
Donner, party of 50. Donner, party over here.
truly is the best medicine.
Hello, Flint.
Robin Williams,
You treat a disease, you win, you lose. You treat a person, I guarantee you win, no matter what the outcome.
Patch Adams.
Alright, so I'll just go over like a brief overview of the characters real quick. So you have Dr. Hunter Patch Adams, that's played by Robin Williams. He is a doctor that eventually goes into medical school. He has a very different approach for treating patients, in which he is about kind of like the spiritual care and getting involved with the patient on an emotional level, which, as you can see, one of the other characters I have is Dean Walcott. He is more about, like he said, ripping humanity out of you and making you into something better, which is a doctor. In other words, he doesn't really care about getting on the patient's level. He's more worried about treating the patient as a disease, not an actual person. And then you have some other more minor characters, but like Truman Schiff, that's guy in the bottom right-hand corner. That's one of Patch's like best friends. He's really loyal to him. He follows him in almost all that he does and really believes in his approach. You have Mitch Roman, which is his roommate. He's a very dedicated person to becoming a doctor because his whole family was full of doctors. Although he really doesn't like Patch's approach, he does eventually warm up to it. And then you have Karen Fisher, which is Patch's love of his life eventually. She really doesn't like his approach either because she had a really hard time getting into medical school anyways. And trying to go about his approach, she feels it's just going to drive her out of school, so she wasn't very open to it. But later in the movie, you'll see that she does get pretty open to it. So I just have a little bit of a summary of the content. It starts with Patch going into a mental institution due to suicidal thoughts. And he's actually trying to get help, but you see in the beginning he's talking with a psychiatrist, and all the psychiatrist does is just write down stuff, not even paying attention to him. And he eventually starts saying obscure things that you would think would tip off the psychiatrist, but the psychiatrist isn't paying attention, so he knows he's not listening. And he eventually gets the inspiration to go to medical school and become a doctor when he helps his roommate, Rudy, who has schizophrenia. He had a fear of going to the bathroom. He hadn't gone to the bathroom in 3 days because he thought these squirrels were going to attack him in front of the bathroom. So with like 2 minutes, Patch tries to reenact them fighting these squirrels just to get him into the bathroom. Eventually they like charge the door and Rudy actually goes to the bathroom. And it seems really minor, but he hadn't gone to the bathroom in 3 days. He'd just been going in a urinal in his bed, and they finally got into the bathroom, and psychiatrists couldn't even do it. So that inspired him to go to Virginia Medical School, where he starts to learn. He really wants to become a doctor. He thinks it's going to be good for him, but the doctors have a very not patient-centered approach, kind of just treat the disease, don't worry about the emotional side of a patient. Patch completely does not want to do that, disregards it. Plus, he kind of brings humor into how he cares for the patient. As you saw in like the trailer, there's some incidences where he's with the kids and he's like kind of cutting up the equipment to make himself goofy, just kind of lift up the spirits. Throughout it, he forms a relationship with Karen. Like I said, it's a rocky start at first, and then he kind of develops an inspiration with her to open a clinic, his own clinic. It was illegally done. He was kind of opening his own practice without any type of medical license, but he wanted to do it because he did not want to follow what he was doing with the dean at his hospital. Eventually, Karen gets really inspired by this and finally musters up the courage to visit a patient that had depression and schizophrenia. That patient had called and wanted to speak with one of them. Karen goes and actually gets murdered by the patient. And the patient commits suicide as well. And this completely wipes out the inspiration of Patch. He actually contemplated suicide again, and eventually he was on a cliff of the property of the clinic, and he saw a butterfly, and he remembered Karen always wanted to be a caterpillar because it would bloom into a butterfly, and she thought that was like a good representation of life, how beautiful life can be. So he got the inspiration again, but then got caught by the medical board for doing an illegal practice. Eventually he does win the case with medical board because the board was really inspired by his want to care for a patient on an emotional level, even though Dean Walcott didn't really enjoy it. So relating it to class, I have a couple videos. Here's the first one. I'll explain it after you watch it.
Preview of coming attraction. There's death, to die, to expire, to pass on, to perish, to peg out, to push up daisies, to push up posies, to become extinct, curtains, deceased, demised, departed and defunct. Dead as a doornail, dead as a herring, dead as a mutton, dead as nits. The last breath, paying a debt to nature, the big sleep. God's way of saying, slow down.
To check out.
To shuffle off this mortal coil.
To head for the happy hunting ground.
To blink for an exceptionally long period of time.
To find oneself without breath.
To be the incredible decaying man.
Worm buffet.
Kick the bucket.
Buy the farm.
Take the cab.
Cash in your chips.
And if we bury your ass up, we have a place to park my bike.
That's all I'm getting through. All right, so that specific patient was Peter Coyote. He was a very angry man. He got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Really shows the 5 grieving processes. He had a lot of denial at first because he had a son and a wife. And so it really quickly developed into anger. He was really tough to deal with. The nurses didn't even want to go in his room. He would throw stuff at him. And Patch didn't really get good response from him at first. But he realized how hard-nosed he was and how tough of a guy he was. So he tried to do this approach where he was just really straightforward with them, which I think is kind of what he wanted. So he was very straightforward about like the coming attractions, which was death, because he was ultimately going to die. And this really did end up opening Peter up to him. Eventually, throughout the movie, he starts going through all the other processes. He eventually starts to, he gets into kind of like a bargaining, which I think this is more the bargaining side. Then he does get depressed, trying to figure out what he's going to do with his wife and his son. But he eventually does accept his death, and it was a very nice process to see, especially how angry he was to start. And this was just another brief thing to watch.
Here we have a juvenile onset diabetic with poor circulation and diabetic neuropathy. As you can see, these are diabetic ulcers with lymphedema and evidence of gangrene. Questions?
Any osteomyelitis?
None apparent, although not definitive. Treatment? To stabilize the blood sugar. Consider antibiotics, possibly amputation.
What's her name? I was just wondering the patient's name.
Marjorie.
Hi, Marjorie.
Hi. Yes, thank you. Let's move on.
Okay, so the purpose of that was just kind of show. Now, you won't be walking in a hospital and just see a patient like that just sitting in the middle of the hallway. That's not going to happen. And another thing to show with that was just kind of showing how like the doctors treated that patient like a test subject. Didn't ask her name, didn't even say hello, treated her like she was just the diabetic ulcer that they wanted to learn about. And it was just nice to see how he wanted to treat her more as a patient, which I think is kind of important throughout this, because I know we talked about spiritual care, how to like improve quality of life, and treating that patient more as a person, actually recognizing her name and getting more on like that patient's level is really going to help improve that entire treatment process. And you can even see the fear in her eyes when the doctor just said amputation without regard for what her feelings really were. So this kind of leads me to more of what like relates in class, specifically about spiritual care, but also helping with those who are terminally ill, not just those that are just trying to get treated. In the trailer, you saw a man with like shooting balloon animals. That man had a terminal illness, and he used to be a safari man. He went out and hunted big game. He hadn't gotten to do it in years, and so Patch went out of his way to get these balloon animals and make it feel like he was out there going on a hunt again. And it really did open that guy up. He hadn't really eaten much, wouldn't really talk much, but after that, he just felt like he was relieved. He got to experience it again. He said it was almost like the real thing because he hasn't been able to experience it for so long. And then there was another woman. I call her Noodle Woman. It's because she really likes noodles. It's obscure, but she really liked noodles, and she said all she wants is to be able to swim in a bowl of noodles. So towards the end of the movie, after Patch won his medical case, he got a big bowl of noodles and actually brought her out and just threw her in there. And she was just like the happiest person in the world. And I just thought that was great to like, it was like just trying to go out of his way to bring a better end of life for her, because this was like her, almost like her dying wish, because she wasn't going to get another chance. She was terminally ill. And then another kind of taboo topic about this movie is bringing humor into death. It's not something a lot of people really think about doing. It's a very dark, somewhat dark topic to a lot of people, and bringing up something about laughing with it is just not really recommended to a lot of people, but Patch kind of is less fearful of that, especially with the guy with pancreatic cancer, who that guy was all about kind of bringing humor into death, especially when they started reciting the different ways you could say dying. And then also it kind of brings about making death an inspiration, and specifically with Karen, he was ready to give up again, but he really wanted to devote his entire work to living it out for Karen, who became inspired by him. He in turn ended up becoming inspired by her and wanted to devote his entire life to her death and bringing that work about, especially because she ended up becoming really good at it too. She really connected with the patients on an emotional level. So the first discussion question I have is, how do you feel about bringing humor into death, and more importantly, would you feel comfortable enough to do it?
I think it just depends. Like, if I'm a physician, like, bringing humor into death with the patient, it depends on what the patient would want. But, I mean, I think if the patient wanted, like, I feel comfortable to do it.
That's good. Go ahead.
I don't think so much like is the humor aspect. Is I think you just need to holistically treat patients. Like what you were saying about the balloon animals, that's not like super funny or anything, but like it made that guy's day. Just doing little things like that to make the last months of somebody's life more enjoyable, I think it had a big impact on them.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like also like it would depend on the specific patient themselves. Like if they're like a joking person, then maybe that's how you can like get a point across, or like how you can address it. But if they're more serious and then you go in and try to joke about it, then they're probably not going to take you serious, and it could be more
Right. I'd agree. And yeah, it really is on like a patient-to-patient basis. Like the guy, like you said, the guy with the safari, that he was the big game hunter, he was very different personality than the guy that was dying from pancreatic cancer. And in fact, Patch did try to do like act like a clown, like he was with the kids with the guy with pancreatic cancer, and he got a tray thrown at him, so that didn't really work out. So it's all about different approach, I would agree. My second question was, for all healthcare professionals, do you think providing spiritual care is done enough or could be improved, and how would you improve it? Jason?
I definitely don't think it's done enough, but I think part of the problem is that people don't really focus on their own spiritual aspects of their life, and so if you're not focusing on view yourself as a spiritual being, then you can't really help someone else through their spiritual problems, because you just can't do that. If you don't view yourself and people as spiritual, then you can't counsel someone in their spiritual distress. So I think that part of making it better is for healthcare professionals to have an awareness of themselves as spiritual beings, and then that will help them provide spiritual care to their patients.
Agreed. But yeah. Alright, and then my final discussion was Patch often went out of his way with breaking some of the hospital policy to implement his methods of care, especially he also stole a lot of hospital supplies just to open up his clinic. So knowing it's not directly harming the patient, would you attempt to do what he did, such as like bring the balloons in the hospital with a BB gun, which any type of gun like that was not really allowed on a hospital campus? I can like go along with this. Like I don't know if I would go necessarily as far as with some things, especially with stealing from the hospital. I would definitely never do that. That could be a big problem. But bringing in, and I don't necessarily think I'd bring in like a BB gun like he did, but I wouldn't mind bringing in like certain props if it would fit, just to like try and help the patient. I feel like that's going above and beyond for your patient, and it's going to really make that patient feel better about getting personalized care. Especially if they're terminally ill, it shows like they're still valued at end of life. Because I feel like sometimes some terminally ill patients might feel like they're just of low value now. They're just going to die. They're just there to be comforted, and that's it. There's nothing else that they're worth. So I feel like I would, in certain circumstances, not everything is. Yeah.
I think like with kids, it would be really beneficial, like how you guys like the clown noses and things like that. Like I think that's where you would get the most out of bringing some type of whatever it is you want to bring in and showing them that you care about them. I think that's more beneficial than it might be in older adults, but you know, it's kind of, like you said, it's person to person.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. Kids may be a lot more receptive to that. Anything else?
Oh yeah, she kind of said I was talking about kids, but just like also it depends on the person. I mean, he personally, he enjoys it, and it's like the more he does it, it seems like the better he gets at it. If you notice the movie, he gets better and better at helping people that have a lot of psychiatric issues or they're dying. So I mean, might as well, if you get really good at it, just keep doing it.
Right, and I like that he just really wanted to improve quality of life, because like throughout the movie, it made it seem like he wasn't going to be like a smart doctor, but he had like top grades in the class, and then he was also able to implement all this new ideas. So he was really innovative with it. Anything else? All right, that's it.
All right, thank you.